morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. So here's how I would love for you to help me this morning. If you could, in the chat, type out where you are, what high school are you with, and what city is that high school in. That will really help me. I don't know if we have middle schoolers on as well, but just so I can know who I'm speaking to, that will help me this morning. Monroe, okay. River Ridge, okay. I see you, Lacey. Awesome. Hazen, Auburn, Riverside, okay. Capitol High School. Oh, I see y'all. You are from all over, okay. Sumner. So I actually live in the Lacey School District, so River Ridge, I got to shout out some love to you, but my husband is the head football coach at Timberline High School here in Lacey, so we still love y'all though. We still love y'all here in Lacey. Anyway, I am really excited to be with you, and I'm excited that there are folks on both sides of the state who are here. Rogers High School, I used to teach at Rogers High School in Spokane, and I lived across the street from Rogers High School, Puyallup, so I see you, Rogers, too, okay. Federal Way, I worked for the superintendent of Federal Way. I taught at Stewart Middle School in Tacoma. My kids all fed into Lincoln High School. So it is really good to see folks from places that I have been. Y'all, I've been in teaching a long time. People always tell me I don't look my age, but I'm gonna tell you my age right now because it matters in the context of this conversation. I am 50, y'all. I just turned 50 years old. I'm old. But what that means, I just have decided I'm just wise. I'm not old, I'm wiser. I have been around and seen a lot. I am 50, I am really, and my body feels it. So I may not look it, my body is feeling it right now, y'all, okay? I'm definitely feeling 50 years old. Yes, I am. Although, just fun facts, maybe too much information, but yesterday I was doing a walking meeting on Zoom, and this young man, probably 18, 19 years old, said, "Can I get your number?" I said, "No, you may not have my number." I am old enough to be your mom, maybe your grandma. I don't know, but thank you. And I walked away and I was just like, oh, goodness. Okay. So anyway, I am 50 years old, which means I have done a lot of work. And so I'm super excited to be with y'all, especially because you are Key Club. So another fun fact, I used to run the Key Club at my high school in Spokane at Rogers High School. I got involved with Kiwanis teaching at Rogers High School. And you may not know this, but North Spokane is actually the poorest zip code in the state of Washington, which I did not know till I moved there. My students, I'll never forget how I got involved in Key Club. One of my best students in my AVID class, how many of you have AVID in your building? Who has AVID? Okay. So AVID, Advancement via Individual Determination, is a program to get students into college. And I was the AVID teacher at Rogers High School. And one day, one of my students came to class, and my best student, and she said, Miss Jones, I'm going to get a job today. And I looked at what she was wearing, and I said, oh, you are not going to interview for a job like that. She had jeans that had tears in it, and her t-shirt was wrinkled, and she had tennis shoes on. And I said, honey, you cannot go to a job interview that way. And she said, well, this is all they have, Miss Jones. And I'll never forget, I don't know if y'all have a Plato's Closet in your community or you know what Plato's Closet is, but it's a secondhand, kind of high-end youth thrift shop. And at the time we had a Plato's Closet right down the street from our school. And I said, no, honey, as soon as the bell rings, I need you to jump in your car, follow me to Plato's Closet. I'm buying you an outfit for your interview this afternoon. And so I did. I took her to Plato's Closet, and we were able to find her a suit and some heels and some nice jewelry. And I realized that day that a lot of my students who were 17 looking for jobs didn't have what they needed. And so I began to reach out to organizations to ask, can you help my students? And Kiwanis and Spokane said, we can do one better. We're going to go to the mall, and every single one of your AVID students is going to get a brand new suit. And that's how I got involved with Kiwanis. I heard you talking about food drives, and we began to gather food, and we started a food bank at our school because of Kiwanis. We started a clothing closet at our school because of Kiwanis. And so it is just such an incredible honor to be in your presence, because I I love Kiwanis. I love what Key Club does for students. And so I'm really excited to be here this morning. So we're going to talk a little bit about equity today, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, how you can make your schools, your Key Clubs more diverse. But before we do that, I want to see what you all know. Okay, I want to see what you know. So if your last name begins with the letters A to F as in father, Luke, I am your father. A to F. What do you think the word diversity means? What do you think? And don't go look it up on Google, okay? Just give me what you got. Give me what you got. What do you think diversity means? If your last name begins with the letters G to M as in mother, what do you think culturally responsive practice is? Culturally responsive. Now that's a big long word. Again, don't go Google it. Just make something up. Culturally responsive practice. What do you think that means? Culturally responsive practice. Your last name begins with the letters G to M. What is culturally responsive practice? Now, just make something up. There's no right or wrong here. I'm not playing English teacher today or history teacher. Just write what you think. And then last word. If your last name begins with N to Z, what do you think the word equity means? What do you think the word equity? And I'm just going to give you a hint. Equity is not equality. Equity and equal are not the same things. I'm just going to give you a hint. Equity and equal are not the same thing. So go ahead and type in the chat. What do you think those three words mean? So we had right up front, diversity, culturally responsive practice, and equity. We have a lot of great definitions in here. Really great definitions. Good, thank you. Awesome. Okay, so just I'm gonna invite you to be brave this morning. In fact, pause, keep typing. I'm gonna back up and share with you before we get back to those definitions. Keep typing if you haven't typed yours, but before we get back to those definitions, I wanna share with you 4 moves that I encourage educators to make, that I encourage administrators to make. I do a lot of work with students as well. So I do this equity work with children as young as 4th grade. And there are 4 postures or behaviors that I talk about when doing equity work that I think are really, really important. And before we get to those definitions, I want to share those 4 postures so that we can start with the right attitude to do this work. Because here's what I'll tell y'all. Can I give you something, being old? In my 50 years of life, one of the things that I have learned, and I've learned it really clearly in the last year, as Americans, people who live in the United States of America, we are really bad at talking about, I'm going to say 4 things. We're really bad at talking about 4 things: race, politics, religion, and gender sexuality. Those 4 things. And you know why we're really bad? I'm just going to offer you my perspective after 50 years. We're bad because we've been told to not talk about those things in mixed company. We're unpracticed. We're not actually bad people, but that's how it shows up on social media, like we're really bad people. We hate each other. I'm going to offer today that part of the reason we're bad at these things is because we're unpracticed. And so before we even jump into terminology, I want to share with you 4 strategies that I've been using with adults and young people to really help us prepare for this hard conversation that is going to be diversity and equity. This is not going to be a simple conversation. So if y'all were coming hoping to just be inspired, I'm going to inspire you. I'm also going to challenge you. And so first posture, most important posture, number 1, is this thing called gratitude. And here's the crazy thing about gratitude. So I've always known that gratitude is important, but right before the pandemic hit, my best friends and I published a book. And one of my friends' chapters was about the power of gratitude. She was a high school principal. She was a mom of 3 little kids. She was going through breast cancer treatments. So she was in chemotherapy and writing her PhD thesis. Y'all, she was like a little overextended, just a little overextended. But she discovered while doing research on gratitude that, do you know that gratitude is not something some people are just better at naturally? Gratitude is actually something some people are more practiced at. And so you can only see this much of me on the screen, but y'all, I'm a giant. I'm 6 feet tall with like half a foot of hair, as you can see. So I'm about 6'5" when I show up in person. Not every tall Black lady is a ball player, but y'all, I'm a ball player. And I get to call myself a baller because I played for 40 years in 12 countries. So I didn't just play some basketball in middle school and high school. I played in college. I tried out for 2 WNBA teams. I have played some basketball, y'all. Now, here's the truth about me. Because I played basketball for so long, if you say, Erin, go shoot a free throw, I'm going to catch the ball a certain way. I'm going to spin it twice. I'm going to bounce it twice. I'm going to spin it again, and I'm going to shoot. Because I've shot 100,000 free throws in my lifetime. I just do it without even thinking about it. I will shoot a free throw. Gratitude is a lot like that. The more you practice gratitude, the more it becomes natural for you to be grateful. You develop muscle memory around gratitude. Here's the best news about gratitude though. And here's why I start with gratitude everywhere I go. Do you know that gratitude actually changes your brain chemistry? Gratitude will actually cause your dendrites to reform in your brain to create this positive neural network around your brain. How many of you would say in the last year and a half, we have needed more positive? Maybe y'all aren't living in the same country I'm living in. We have needed some more positive, right? And so I start every meeting that I do, every assembly that I do with gratitude. So in the chat right now, I want you to type out, what is one thing that you're grateful for? And it could be something really little. Y'all, I got my Dutch Brothers coffee today. Okay, I don't know if y'all have Dutch Brothers where you are, but let me some Lacey. We got 2 Dutch Brothers here. I am happy for my coffee right now. I want to invite you to think about, as Key Club leaders, how you can make gratitude a part of your everyday life, but also your meetings. I want to encourage you, because I've led lots of meetings, y'all. I start every meeting that I lead, whether with young people or with adults, with gratitude. I want to encourage you, whether it's on social media, whether it's with your family sitting around a table at dinner, I want to encourage you to think about how you can make gratitude a part of your everyday practice so that it becomes muscle memory. And here's what I'll tell you. I started practicing gratitude on March 13th of 2020. Who remembers what happened that week? March of 2020. I think we all remember that week. And we all live in the PNW, right? The world ended. Yes, I'll never forget. I was out walking. I'm a crazy walking lady now. So I stopped playing basketball at 45 and I walk like 7 to 10 miles a day. So people in my neighborhood are like, wait, I saw you in Tumwater. Yo, Tumwater is 8 miles away. I will just walk to the store in Tumwater. I'm a crazy walking lady. And that's why I look like this at 50. So you can make fun of me all you want to, but that's why I look good at 50 years old, because I be walking everywhere. But I was out walking, I think on March 11th, and my friend called and said, oh my gosh, Erin, you need to get on TV. There's a press release. I don't know if you remember that press conference with the governor and then Chris Weitzel, and shutting down schools. And y'all, all my work is in schools. I lost everything in 24 hours. Every job that I had, I lost. I'm not a teacher on someone's staff right now. I'm a consultant. This is what I do. If I'm not speaking somewhere, I'm not making money. And I lost everything in 24 hours. And what I knew immediately is, oh my gosh, I think I need to practice being grateful for what I do have. I do have a house. I do have a car. I have amazing children. They're all adults, but they're just amazing. I got stuck with my adult children and my husband, and I am so grateful. But I began to practice gratitude literally that day on March 12th. And I said, every single day in every meeting, I'm going to practice gratitude. Yo, I lost 11 friends between March of 2020 and today. I've lost 11 friends. You know why I can still smile and keep going? Because I practice gratitude. Y'all, I've lost a lot in the last year and a half. But I also believe that practice of gratitude has absolutely shifted my brain chemistry and helped me to see the world in a way that I couldn't have had I not practiced gratitude. So I just want to invite you every day, make gratitude part of your practice. One of the things that a couple of my friends have done is they've started gratitude journals. So whether you do that on your phone, whether you love some paper, I collect, I gather supplies. I am kind of addicted to pens and notebooks, and I got way too many, y'all. 50 years. So I have to keep throwing them out because I hold on to them way too long. But you may be one of those people that needs to tangibly hold stuff. So get yourself a gratitude journal and just start. And you don't have to write a lot every day. Some days you're going to be super grateful, and other days it's going to be like, oh my gosh, I got up this morning. Like it's going to be that kind of a day. Right. But I want to invite you to start every day with gratitude. Posture number one, gratitude. Posture number two, I want everybody to put your hands in the screen like this. Put your hands out like this in the screen. And I want you to picture in your hands the things that you are best at. I didn't say the things you are the best at. I said the things that you are best at. What do you love to do? What are you good at? Could be something that you do in Key Club, but it could be something that has nothing to do with Key Club. I'll tell you what, my smile, I would put that in my hands. There's a way that at 6 feet tall with this smile, it disarms people. I can see people terrified as I'm walking up, and then I smile. And I have a mask that is clear so people can see my smile. I'm very intentional about it. So I know my smile would be in here. I also happen to speak 4 languages fluently. So I would put those languages in here. I would put basketball in here. I also write music. I put that in here. I want you to think about, what are you good at? Okay, put your hands down. I want to invite us. There's a huge difference between confidence and cockiness. Huge difference. Confidence is saying, okay, I'm good at this thing. I'm going to keep working at this thing though. I'm going to keep getting better. Cocky says, I'm there. I've arrived. I was born the best. Y'all, I hate some cockiness. I do not like, if I was playing basketball against, I'm just going to keep it real, little 13-year-old boy, he said, Miss Jones, I'm going to kick your butt, you're old. I was like, oh, you are going down, little boy. You going down. If they just wanted to play, I'm good. But once you start getting cocky, there's something in me that just rises up. I do not like cocky. I don't like it on the basketball court. I don't like it in administrators at school. I don't like it in politicians, entertainers. So I'm not saying cocky, but I am saying I think it is important that we look in our hands and figure out what we're good at. And that is confident, y'all. And then work at that thing and be willing to put it back out in the world. What does that have to do with equity and diversity? I think sometimes when we talk about diversity and equity, and we'll get to those definitions in a minute, and we want to expand who's in our group, I think sometimes we start with what we don't have, and we don't take time to think about, what do we already have here? What do each of us bring to the table? And then when we think about who's not in the room, we think about maybe why they can't come instead of why should they come. So I want to invite us today. First posture, gratitude. Second posture, let's think about what's in our hands. What do you have? What does your community have? What does your group have already? Okay. Third posture. This one's hard, y'all. This one's hard. Now, the young people in this room are too young to remember this, but us old folks, and I see a couple of us old folks in here, will remember when political correctness became a thing. Students, how many of you have heard of political correctness? Okay, most of you have probably heard of it. I remember when that became a thing, y'all. And here's what political correctness, I think, has done for us as a country. I'm just going to keep it real. I think it's taught us how to lie to one another really well. I think what political correctness did is it taught us to say the right word. But I'll tell you, as a Black woman, there's nothing worse to me than you say the right word, but I can see in your eyes and your body language, you do not believe it. You don't respect me. There's nothing worse. I would rather know that you actually don't respect me. I'd rather know that from the jump start than to have to figure out your body language. Like, wait, you're saying one thing, but what I'm feeling, and y'all, I would say I speak 4 languages plus body language. I'm an expert in body. I taught middle school for 15 years, y'all. If you are not an expert in body language, you will fail miserably teaching middle school children. I'm an expert in body language. And I think what political correctness did is it taught us to not say what we actually think. I'm going to offer another phrase that I've heard on a lot of college campuses. I do a lot of work with college students now. Safe spaces is another term that is being thrown around a lot. And I just want to share a little story from my youngest son. I can't believe this. He's in his last year of a PhD program right now, my youngest one. So if you wonder, like, she doesn't look old enough, I'm old enough because he's finishing a PhD right now. But my youngest son called me from his undergraduate program when he was 20. And he said, Mom, there's this super right-wing conservative speaker on our campus. And they said, all of us who feel a little bit threatened by that message have been invited to the safe space on campus. And there are adults here, there are counselors here to help us kind of process what we're thinking. He said, now, mind you, my son is on the spectrum. So he's autistic. He's on the autism spectrum. He's also gifted, y'all. He got one wrong on the SAT. So he's gifted and on the spectrum. So not so gifted with social interactions, very gifted when it comes to intellectual stuff. But he calls me at 20 and he says, Mom, there's a speaker on our campus and we don't actually know what that speaker's saying. So we're all over here on one side of campus in a safe room while half of our campus is over listening to the speaker. We don't know what the speaker is saying. And in about an hour, that speaker is going to go home. And those students who've listened to that speaker are going to be out on campus. And we're not going to know who they are. And we're not going to know what they've heard. And we're not going to know if we're actually safe. He said, so being in this space actually doesn't feel very safe to me, Mom. And I said, buddy, you're not wrong. So here's what I'm going to offer: translation to your spaces at school. If you're in a room with all Black students and you're the one Asian student or the one white student, you may not say anything. If you're the one Black student in a room of all Asian students or all white students, you may just stay quiet. If you're the one Christian in a room with all atheists, you're probably not going to say anything. If you're the one atheist in a room of all Christians, you're probably going to stay quiet. Here's what I think Safe Spaces has done. I think both political correctness and safe spaces have done this. It's just silenced people. So what we've learned is we're just not ever going to talk about hard things in mixed company, unless we know for sure that everybody around us believes what we do. And so here's what's happened, y'all. We've gotten really bad at talking to one another about hard things. And I think we've seen that manifest itself, oh my gosh, hundreds of times in the last year and a half, just since the pandemic, just since school is shut down. Think about Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, the presidential election. We have demonstrated an inability to talk about hard things as a country. And so third posture is something I call brave spaces. I actually think this conversation about equity requires not safety, but courage. And so I want to invite you to adopt something that I call brave spaces. And I talk about community agreements in all of the spaces that I work in, whether I'm working with 4-year-olds or 44-year-olds. I talk about community agreements, and they're agreements that we make as a community about being brave. So I want to invite you to think about, what would it take for you to be your best and bravest self today? I'm going to offer you some, but I want you to think about, as you go back to your key clubs, what would you add? What would you change? What would you add to be your best and bravest self in your context? So number one, I'm going to offer, let's not try to fix things today. Let's just learn. I think a lot of people, Erin, give us the 10 things to get to equity. Y'all, those 10 things don't exist because equity and diversity looks different in Lacey than it looks in Spokane. Looks different in Yakima than it looks in Tenino. Looks different in Vancouver than it looks in Blaine or Auburn Riverside. So there are not 10 steps. So I want you to pivot from, Erin's going to give us 5 things to just learn today. Pivot from fixing to learning today. Number 2, agreement. I want you to embrace discomfort. There are going to be times today, and then I'm back with you again in a couple weeks, when you're going to feel really uncomfortable. Guess what? Anything good requires some discomfort. Whether you're learning to play a new instrument, whether you're getting ready for a sports season. I played 3 varsity sports in high school, soccer in the fall, basketball in the winter, softball in the, I was all year round. Between seasons, I was training differently. How you run on the soccer field is different than the basketball court, is different than the baseball fields, right? And so I had to work out new muscles, and the beginning of season was always a little bit uncomfortable. So I want to offer, you're going to feel uncomfortable at times. That doesn't mean run away. Push into the discomfort. Push into it, okay? So number 1, stop fixing, just learn. 2, push through discomfort. 3, because this is going to be uncomfortable, I want to offer that shame, blame, and guilt have no place here. Shame, blame, and guilt have no place here. So we're going to do something physical because I'm a teacher, y'all. So I do physical stuff. So I need your hands out here. Hands. I want to see everybody's hands, hands. Because here's what I know. When you do something with your hands, you will remember it. So watch me. I have a TikTok video about this, by the way. I am at Afro Educator. I'll type that in the chat later. But I have a TikTok video about this. Let's call each other in and up into a better version of ourselves. Not out and down into shame. Let's do that again. Let's call each other in and up into a better version of ourselves. Not out and down into shame. One more time. Let's call each other in and up into a better version of ourselves. Not out and down into shame. I think we are really good as a country right now at calling people out, at shaming people. And I'm going to offer, shame may feel good to you. It may feel good to shame somebody. It will not change them long term. Not in good ways. Shame does nothing to change people in good ways. And if you've not ever heard of a woman named Brené Brown has one of the best TED Talks on shame. She's a millionaire today, y'all, because we are good at shaming people. And so she has a lot of work because we are destroying one another with shame. We got to stop it. It doesn't mean that we let people get off with saying and doing things that are offensive. But here's my rule for myself. I will not critique someone unless I can do it with love. Now, guess what? To love somebody does not mean you have to like them. Here's what I mean by this. If I love someone, I treat them as if they are equally valuable in the world as me. And so my rule for me, whether it's on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, is if I see something that's offensive, I typically will call someone in privately. So I'll go to their private messages, I'll go to direct message and send them a message and say, hey, that video you just posted is kind of offensive. Here's what I'm seeing there. And I think you may really hurt some people. But I will never do it publicly. I don't ever post right on their page. I may call them if I have their phone number and say, you know what, I would encourage you to pull that down because here's how I think that's going to be perceived. I don't think you meant it that way. And if you did, wow. But I don't allow myself to critique people if I'm not willing to do it with love. Okay, so I want to offer in a brave space, shame, blame, and guilt, not useful tactics. They're just not useful. Okay, here's the other caveat to that though. When you mess up, which you will, you are going to mess up on this stuff. There are groups of people that you don't know well yet that you're going to say the wrong thing to. When you mess up, here's their 3 words. 3 words, y'all. 3 words. I am sorry. I'm going to say this again. I am sorry. So this is not an apology. If my words offended you, I apologize. That is not an apology, y'all. That is not an apology. Here's also not an apology. Oh, I didn't mean it that way. You're taking me too seriously. Why are you taking me so? Don't do that. Just, I am sorry. You're going to mess up. And then show grace for yourself. Okay, as a college basketball player, if I missed a shot and we lost the game by 1 point, I would beat myself up for days. I'd replay the play in my head and beat myself up for days. Y'all, I could never go back and reshoot that shot, but I would replay it in my head. Guess what I learned later? Okay, I could go back and replay it in my head and think about, okay, I was shooting a layup. I should have leaned into the hoop. I fell away from the hoop. I can work on leaning into the hoop. I can't go back and shoot that shot again, but I can work on my form. It is no different in this. You can't go back and unsay that stupid thing you said. You can change how you say it next time. You can fix your form. So show grace for yourself when you mess up. Okay, so number 1, no fixing, just learning. Number 2, Embrace discomfort. Number 3, no place for shame, blame, and guilt. Number 4, I am sorry. That may be the most important one. Number 5, show grace for yourself. Number 6, that's what I'm going to give you. And then I want to invite you to think about for the future, what else might you need? This one is the hardest one, I think. Get curious. I think our greatest learning happens in curiosity. But here's what I mean and why I think this one's really hard. I'm just going to invite you. The last year and a half, there have been some people posting things and saying things and voting a particular way that have been really hard for me. People in my own family, people in my church circle, that I'm like, I don't understand y'all. Saying some stuff and doing some stuff that I'm confused. And instead of saying, oh my gosh, you're horrible people, what I made myself do is reach out and say, can you help me understand? Please help me understand why you voted this way, why you posted this thing. And so I want to invite you to get curious about things you don't understand and don't agree with. Now, here's the truth. You are never gonna, it doesn't matter actually that you agree with everything I say or anybody else says. But I want to invite you to at least get curious about other people's perspectives and opinions. And I think when we can be authentically curious about other people, it will help us find common ground. When we automatically see somebody has a D or an R behind their name and we assume they're bad for whatever reason, and we don't ask questions, there's no bridge that can be built. But if we can just get curious, that's where the bridge is built to finding some unity. So I just want to invite, that is how I describe brave spaces. I want to invite you, Key Club leaders, to think about having a conversation in your club the next time. What would it take for us to be our best and bravest self? And I'll just offer, I don't ever ask my students to do what I'm not willing to do. So you will always see me, I will model this stuff and I'll model it very publicly. If I make a public mistake, I will publicly apologize. If I ask you to be vulnerable, I will first be vulnerable. As leaders, we have an obligation, I believe, to not talk a particular way if we're not willing to walk it. We got to walk our talk. So number 1, posture, gratitude. Number 2, what's in your hands? What are the assets? Number 3, brave spaces. Number 4, this is a really practical thing. It's called grounding in. Now, it used to be back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, if you were planning to have a baby, you'd have to go take these classes called Lamaze breathing classes. I see you, Kathleen. Kathleen's like, yeah, I remember Lamaze breathing classes. And you would go and learn how to breathe deeply while you were, so that you prepare when you were having your baby. They would say, breathe, honey, breathe. Remember your breathing classes. And you'd have to, in the middle of the worst pain known to anyone in the world, they would be yelling at you, breathe, remember your breathing classes. And you'd have to like slow down your breathing. And because you'd practiced it for weeks before, you could kind of slow down your breathing, even though your body felt like it was going to explode. But breathing is really important. And here's why Lamaze is so important. When you are having a baby, your whole body is like it's crazy. Your body's crazy. You're trying to get this big thing out of a small hole. It's just not fun, y'all. But if you can learn how to breathe, you can do hard things. If you can learn how to breathe, all the rest of your body can focus on that hard thing you're doing. I know that's a really gross example maybe for some of y'all, but again, we don't talk about hard things. We need to get used to talking about hard things. Do you know having conversations about diversity and equity are like having a baby? It's hard. And there are going to be certain people that are going to be angry. And if you can just stop and breathe and get yourself regulated, those conversations will happen much more smoothly. So we're going to practice something called grounding in. And it's like Lamaze breathing. It's asking our body to just stop, regulating our breathing, getting our bodies. This is not magic, it's science. There's a lot of science. If you've ever played a sport and you've had an asthma attack, the trainer or your coach will always come over and say, slow down your breathing. Look at me in the eyes, slow down your breathing. They'll often model, breathe in, breathe out. Okay, this is just that. It's not magic. There's a lot of science to this. So here's how, there are lots of different grounding and strategies, but I'm going to use my favorite one that I use with all my students. It's just going to take 30 seconds. If you have anything in your hands, put it down. If you're sitting in a chair, sit up as straight as you're physically able to. Get your feet as flat on the floor as you're physically able to. I want to imagine that our feet are connecting us all across the state of Washington, wherever you happen to be. Our feet are connecting us. If you're able to close your eyes just to eliminate distractions. If you're not able to or don't feel comfortable, find a spot on the wall and just focus on that spot. We're going to take 30 seconds to just listen to the air going in and out of our bodies. I want you to let go of all the stuff you've been talking about today, all the stuff coming later today. Let go of it all. And you're just going to focus all of your attention on your breathing. And we're just going to take 30 seconds. I'm going to cue us in by saying, take a deep breath in, blow it out. I will count to 30 in my head. You just keep breathing deeply in and out. I'll cue us back in by saying, take a deep breath in and out. As thoughts come into your head, cast them out. Say, nope, 30 seconds. We're just focusing on the air. Just listen to the air as it comes in and out of your body. Okay, take a deep breath in. Blow it out. Take a deep breath in. Blow it out. Open your eyes, stretch a little bit. If you want to do a jumping jack, do a jumping jack. So that is called grounding in. It's called grounding in. How many of you would say that when you are tired or upset, you say dumb things? Anybody do that? I do. And so here's what I want to offer. Anytime you're heading into a hard conversation, you have a meeting with the teacher. I don't know how many of you are taking AP classes, y'all. I took 11 AP classes in high school. Don't do that. But there were times like my AP Calc class, she stressed me out. My AP Calc, I still remember Miss Van der Yacht, she stressed me out. I would ground in before I go into class. Just if you're heading into a class or into a conversation, or somebody says something in the hallway that just gets under your skin, instead of responding right away, I want to invite you to just ground in. So you might not have 30 seconds, but imagine if every politician, entertainer, athlete just took 10 seconds before they responded to that tweet or responded to that Facebook post, or in the middle of a debate. If they just took 5 seconds in the middle of a debate to just get grounded before they responded to that comment, imagine how much different our conversations may be. I want to offer that you try this week, like practice it a couple of times. See, where are there opportunities for me to ground in? What's my hardest class that I'm going to? What's that friend that's just making me crazy right now? We all, if you're on social media, you all have that friend who posts crazy stuff. And here's the other thing I want to offer you. If you're on social media, guess what? We don't have to respond to everything on social media. I think right now, we feel like we have to respond to everything. So when that person posts that crazy tweet, we're like, I'm going to tell you. Y'all, if that's how you respond, you're probably not being very helpful. And so I want to invite you, when you read that crazy post on whatever social media platform you're on, instead of responding right away, ground in. And guess what? You may need to ground in for 5 minutes. You may need to go outside and walk around the block a couple times and then come back and look at that post again. And guess what? You don't have to respond. That's another thing I want to offer. You don't have to respond to everything. So if you do not have anything thoughtful to say back, if you know that you can't respond to that post with love, I want to invite you to step away. So we're talking about equity and diversity and hard things. Gratitude. Start with gratitude every day. Number 2, what's in your hand? What are the assets that you bring? What are the assets your community brings to the table already? Number 3, brave spaces. Number 4, ground in. So let's get back to the terminology. Diversity, culturally responsive practice, equity. If your last name was A to F, I would love to hear from a couple students. how would you define, let's get this, so someone else is talking, not me. How would you define diversity? Somebody unmute, go ahead and unmute yourself. If you have an idea for how you would define diversity, go ahead and unmute yourself and share. Let's be brave. Let's practice it right now. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you, Melissa. Come on, somebody. Get courageous right here. Who's got a definition for diversity? Come on, young people. Here's what I'm going to offer.
I guess I'll go.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes.
Since I'm the governor, I have diversity is, being accepting of challenges and being open to learning about things that are different than my own.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Thank you for leading by example. I appreciate that. Anybody want to add anything to Alice's definition? Anyone want to add anything? What is diversity?
Kind of like you talked about, a lot of times we'll see something that we really don't agree with and we'll get angry because we'd be like, why would you say that? Why would you insult someone's culture like that? But at the same time, we can't just let them say anything they want. We still need to, we can't educate all the time, but we still need to have like an open space where we can have conversations so that people can try to change their like stereotypes they have about certain people.
Yeah, good, thank you. Then Sue in the chat said, let me read what you wrote, celebrating differences, yeah. So it's celebrating, honoring differences. I want to offer, how many of you have heard the word tolerate? I do not want to be tolerated, y'all. Tolerate means to put up with something. And I don't want to be tolerated. And I'll tell you, I've been tolerated in a lot of spaces. We're just gonna tolerate Erin. I don't think any human being wants to be tolerated. And so diversity is honoring and celebrating the many ways that we show up differently. I also want to offer that diversity is also things like celebrating Martin Luther King Day, or honoring Hispanic Awareness Month, or Native American history. It's also the ways that we, and I'm going to say superficially, celebrate difference. So I do love Martin Luther King Day. I love Black History Month. And y'all, if those are the only 2 times you're talking about Black people, that's not enough, right? And so there are times when we do these things. We'll have like a multicultural, how many of you have a multicultural event at school? Yeah. So I used to host a multicultural assembly, and people would come in their national dress and they would dance and sing. And that is all really lovely, but guess what? None of that changes systems. It's very superficial. So I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm going to offer today that diversity is just a beginning. Diversity is a beginning place. It's a starting place. Culturally responsive practice. Who's willing to be brave and share? What do you think? And that's a really hard word. What do you think culturally responsive practice is? Culturally responsive practice. And even the adults, if there are any adults that want to open up and share, what do you think that means? It's a harder one. Go ahead. Is it Arisha? How do you say your name?
Yeah, it's Arisha. You got it.
Oh, awesome.
I guess like based on the words, I'm assuming it's like changes that we make in our culture to respond to those types of things.
Yeah, awesome. That's really great. Yes, culturally responsive practice is changing the culture to respond to the different people. So, for example, I didn't share my story at all today, but I obviously not white, and yet I was raised by white people. I was adopted by a white couple. And so I am very familiar with middle-class white culture. Very, y'all, I'm an expert in middle-class white culture because I spent my whole life with middle-class white people. I'm married to a Black man now, so I have had to learn lots of different things. I've visited 15 countries. I speak 4 languages. So I have cultural expertise in lots of different things now. But as a child, I grew up in a middle-class white home, in a school that was predominantly middle-class white. And what culturally responsive practice says is, okay, what's the culture? What's the dominant culture of the space you're in? Are you adapting and adjusting to make sure that other cultures can come in and not just feel tolerated, but embraced? Are you changing how you're doing your work to make sure that other people can come in and feel seen and heard, and they can actually show up as their full selves and not just leave a piece of themselves outside because the culture they see in your club doesn't match their culture? And here's the thing about clubs that's different than school. School, everybody has to show up there. Club, somebody has to want to come. And if they show up to your club and it's a culture that doesn't match theirs and doesn't feel inviting to them, they have to show up in math class. They don't have to show up at Key Club. And so I think culturally responsive practice is really critical for you all to think about, okay, what is our culture? Wow, how do we do our business? Because here's what typically happens in clubs. There is a way, you all have a culture of your club, but everyone is kind of that culture, and you probably don't think about it. So I actually have a document that I can send. I'm not sure who I should send it to, but it will help you unpack your culture a bit. And I want to invite you before the next time we talk to do that cultural inventory to get a sense of what is your culture. Because once you know your own culture, you can adapt and adjust to meet people where they are. I find though that many Americans don't even know they have culture. They actually think they don't have culture. They just think this is just the way it is. And because they don't know their culture, I think it's impossible actually to embrace other cultures if you don't know you have one yourself. I think it's impossible to really value other people if you don't actually see value in what you bring to the table. So I want to offer that culturally responsive practice is understanding I have a culture. Our club has a culture. Our school has a culture. We first have to unpack that. And then, okay, how do we adapt and adjust to make sure that students from different cultures feel like they can show up and be their full self? Okay, equity, last one. Who's got a definition for equity? And we had lots of great responses to that one in the chat earlier. So somebody give me a definition for equity. What do you think equity is? Somebody. Oh, go ahead. Is it Justin? Go ahead, Justin.
Recognizing and knowing that everyone has a different circumstance and giving them the tools that they need for those circumstances. And not everyone's gonna be able to use, say, a hammer. Not everyone needs a hammer for their problems.
Yeah.
Not everyone needs a computer for their problems.
Yeah.
Some people need cars, some people need education.
Yeah. So good. That's so good, Justin. Yeah, so I talk about equity as meeting people where they are and giving them the tools they need to get to thriving. Okay, I don't say to success because I think success in this country is money, it's titles, it's fame. I think flourishing and thriving could look different depending on who you are. So it's meeting people where they are and helping them get to where they want to be. It also requires taking down barriers. So sometimes we have created barriers for people to jump over. How do you get into Key Club? Do you have to fill out paperwork? How do you get into AP classes? Do you get to just sign up for them? Do you know they're available? Right? Sometimes there are barriers to get to flourishing. Sometimes we need to build bridges. Some people just need a car, like Justin said. Sometimes they need a computer. So equity requires looking at systems, tearing down walls, building bridges. Okay, that is equity. So I'm going to offer today that the work that I do is in equity. I start with equity, and there are 3 phases to equity. And the next time I'm with you, we're going to kind of move through those 3 phases quickly. The 3 phases are the power of your personal story. A lot of people want to get to diversity. They want to diversify their clubs. They want to diversify the teaching force. but they haven't done their own work first to understand how they move through the system. And so the first phase of doing really good equity work is understanding, what is my story? How does my identity change how I get to experience this country, my school, Key Club? And so we'll be doing some of that personal work next time. The second phase of equity work is who's other? Who are the populations that I want to reach out to, but I really don't know very well? What are the stories, the narratives that are told in my school about them, whoever they are? Whether that's newly immigrated populations, whether it's students from the LGBTQIA community, whatever that is in your school building, it's going to depend on where you live, who that other is. But first phase is, who am I in this space? Second phase is, who are they? Third phase is, what are the systems in place? What are the barriers that we need to take down in our club? And what are the bridges that need to be built? I'm going to stop there today. I want to offer it to you that if you're interested in knowing more about my story, I didn't want to take time to do that today. I do have 2 TED Talks. So if you just Google Erin Jones, I have 2 TED Talks. I'm about to do my 3rd talk for Spokane TED this year. I also have a book that just came out that is my story, and it's totally readable, y'all. I had high school children read, and there are 2 high schoolers that are featured in the very first. They were my advisors, so they got to read my manuscript. But if you're interested in knowing more about who I am and how I show up in this space, the TED Talks are a great way to do that. I am also on Twitter at Erin Jones in 2016. I'm on Instagram at Erin in 2016. If you didn't know, I'm the first Black woman to run for any state office in the state of Washington. I lost that race by 1 percentage point, y'all. Actually, less than 1 percentage point. I'm glad though, because I don't have to run schools in a pandemic. So I'm actually really glad that I lost. It was a gift, y'all. Sometimes losing is a really good thing. But 2016 is when I ran for office. So you'll see 2016 in a lot of my stuff. And then I'm at Afro Educator. I don't use TikTok very much, but there are a couple of videos on there that you may enjoy. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. I do speak in schools across the country. So if you're looking for an assembly speaker, I do virtual assemblies and in-person assemblies. And I love traveling the state of Washington. If you ever see me in a mall, say hello, please. Don't just walk by me, say hello. I'm in malls all across the state of Washington. So if you have a mall in your community, I have probably walked it at some point. Thanks so much for having me today. I don't know if there's time for a question. If not, I will see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you so much, Erin. Loved having you here. Can we get a round of applause and some spirit in the chat for Erin?